June 14, 1965. Bien Hoa Air Base, South Vietnam. The heat hits first, wet, heavy, pressing down like a soaked blanket the moment the C-130's ramp drops. Jet fuel hangs in the air, sweet and metallic. Beyond the concrete, the land looks calm. Flat patties reflecting the sky, a line of palms, a green wall of jungle in the distance. It looks like a place you can enter, move through, control. It looks that way for exactly 5 seconds. Then the rain comes. It doesn't fall. It arrives. Sheets of water driven sideways by a wind that smells of rot and leaves. The tarmac disappears under ankle-deep runoff. Boots slip. Radios crackle. The horizon vanishes behind a gray curtain. Men shout to be heard and then stop shouting because it doesn't help. Somewhere beyond the fence line, the jungle absorbs the sound and gives nothing back. This is the first lesson. Vietnam does not announce itself as an enemy. It erases you. By the summer of 1965, American units are rotating in fast, advisors turning into battalions, battalions into divisions. The maps say, South Vietnam, a country with borders, provinces, roads. The doctrine says movement, firepower, air superiority. The planning assumes a front, or at least the possibility of one. The men arriving at Bien Hoa and Da Nang expect resistance they can find and fix. What they step into is not a battlefield, it's a climate system that fights first. The monsoon is not weather here, it's a schedule. Roads that exist in the dry season become rivers overnight. Convoys crawl and then stop, wheels spinning in mud the color of coffee grounds. Helicopters lift and drop with the rain, their rotors chewing at clouds that refuse to move. Every operation begins with the sky, not the enemy. Every patrol starts wet. And then there's the ground. Jungle in Vietnam is not scenery. It's architecture, layered, tight, engineered by centuries of growth. Canopy blocks the sun. Understory snags packs and rifles. Vines wrap ankles. The earth underneath is soft and loud. Every step announces itself unless you learn to walk like the land does. Visibility collapses to 10 meters, sometimes less. You don't see a fight coming. You enter it. Units push out from base camps in columns, moving slow, sweating through fatigues that never dry. The radio operator keeps the antenna high, praying the signal holds. Point man scans the ground, not the trees, because punji stakes don't care how brave you are. The jungle doesn't thin toward the border or open into neat fields where tanks can maneuver. It thickens. It folds back on itself. It refuses to be mapped twice the same way. There's no front line here because the land won't allow one. In Europe, a front is a line you can draw, rivers, ridges, cities. In Vietnam, the terrain dissolves lines into pockets and shadows. A cleared area stays cleared only until the next rain. A secured hamlet stays secure until night. Fire bases rise on hills scraped bare by bulldozers, ringed with wire and claymore mines. From above they look dominant, artillery crowns projecting power into the green. From the ground, they look like islands, surrounded on all sides by a sea that moves. And the sea moves underground. The first tunnels aren't impressive at a glance. Holes hidden beneath trapdoors, spider-tight passages reinforced with bamboo. But they don't exist to impress. They exist to persist. They connect villages, storage rooms, command posts, hospitals. They run shallow where bombs fall and deep where they don't. They branch, loop, dead end, and breathe through vents disguised as termite mounds. You can clear a village at noon and be fired on from the same ground by dusk. American patrols learn to listen for the wrong silence, because silence here means someone else is moving. The absence of a front isn't just tactical, it's psychological. There is no moment when the war begins each day. It's already there when you wake up, clinging to your skin with the humidity. It's in the leeches on your socks, the rust on your weapon, the mildew blooming inside your rucksack. It's in the knowledge that territory taken at great cost does not stay taken unless you stay with it. And staying means bleeding into the same ground again and again. Air power roars overhead, precise and overwhelming, but the jungle closes behind the bombs. Napalm clears a patch, vines reclaim it. Craters fill with rain and become ponds. The land absorbs violence the way it absorbs water. By late 1965, the realization is forming quietly without a memo or a speech. This place cannot be invaded the way wars are supposed to be invaded. You can land here, you can fight here, you can win battles here, but the land does not let you arrive. By the end of 1965, the maps start lying. Not intentionally, they show roads, rivers, villages shaded green for jungle. What they can't show is control. A red pushpin on a briefing board means a sweep conducted, contact made, body count recorded. It does not mean the ground belongs to anyone once the helicopters lift away. Morning comes thin and gray over a fire base in the 3 Corps. The perimeter wire is wet, sagging slightly under the weight of last night's rain. A platoon forms up, helmets low, faces already streaked with sweat, though the sun hasn't fully cleared the trees. Orders are simple. Move out, search a grid square, return by dark. The grid square looks small on paper. On the ground, it's endless. There is no line to cross that says now you are in enemy territory. In a conventional war, invasion has a rhythm. You break through, exploit, secure supply lines, push the front forward. Here, there's nothing to break through. The enemy is not waiting behind a ridge or a river. He is waiting behind time. He moves when you stop. He appears where you just were. Patrols fan out, spacing tight because the jungle punishes separation. The point man slows, signaling. Everyone freezes. You listen. To birds, insects, the drip of water off leaves. When the jungle goes quiet, hearts start hammering. Sometimes nothing happens, sometimes everything does. Contact is sudden and close. Muzzle flashes bloom like camera bulbs in the green. Shots crack and echo strangely, swallowed before you can place them. Men hit the dirt instinctively, firing into shadows that shoot back. You never see a formation. You see movement, then it's gone. And when it's gone, there is no pursuit. The ground doesn't allow it. Tracks vanish in minutes under rain and foot traffic. Tunnel entrances collapse deliberately, erased by hands that know exactly how much soil to move. Villages empty at the sound of rotors and refill after dark. You can surround an area with 3 companies and still have men slip through because there is no outside to seal. The concept of a front dissolves into 1,000 overlapping zones of danger. American commanders respond the only way doctrine allows: more mobility, more firepower, more presence. Air assault becomes the answer to geography. Helicopters lift infantry over rivers, paddies, jungle, straight into landing zones carved out by explosives. For a moment, it feels like control. Men pour out, secure the LZ, push outward in sweeps. Then the helicopters leave, and the land closes in again. Every operation becomes temporary by default. You can clear an area, but you cannot hold it without building something. And building something means fixing yourself in place. Fixed positions invite mortars. Fixed schedules invite ambushes. Even the bases themselves exist on borrowed time, dependent on air resupply, ringed by jungle that never stops watching. At night, the war changes shape. Flares arc up, bathing the perimeter in harsh white light. Beyond the wire, nothing moves, or so it seems. Inside the wire, men count hours, listening to the hum of generators and the distant thunder that might be weather or artillery. Somewhere out there, movement is happening without sound. The enemy doesn't need to take the base. He just needs to remind you that you don't own the dark. In the villages, the absence of a front becomes a human problem. Daytime control belongs to whoever is present. Nighttime belongs to whoever dares. Loyalties shift not by ideology, but by survival. A family feeds soldiers at noon and guerrillas at midnight because refusing either is a death sentence. You can't draw a front through a kitchen. This is where invasion logic breaks completely. An invading army expects resistance to harden as it advances. In Vietnam, resistance diffuses. The deeper you go, the more the war spreads sideways. There is no capital to seize that ends it, no river crossing that changes the equation. North and south blur into a single operational space threaded by trails, sanctuaries, and patience. The men on the ground feel it before the strategists do. They talk about walking the same trails, fighting for the same patches of jungle, losing the same friends in places that don't even have names. Victories feel weightless, losses feel permanent. Because without a front, there is no sense of progress, only motion, and motion alone does not equal invasion. By 1966, American boots are everywhere, and somehow, nowhere. From the air, the country looks dominated. Helicopter formations stitch the sky. B-52s carve invisible lines across the map, releasing waves of explosives from altitude so high the crews never see the ground. On briefing boards, arrows push inland, outward, everywhere at once. It looks like pressure. It feels like momentum. On the ground, it feels like standing on a lid that won't stay closed. The tunnels are no longer rumors. They are realities measured in blood and fear. Narrow shafts open under kitchens, beneath shrines, inside hedgerows that look untouched. A man steps wrong and the earth opens. Spikes, pits, sudden darkness. The land itself becomes a weapon, tuned to patience rather than force. Tunnel rats crawl where no invasion doctrine ever planned to go. They strip down to sidearms, flashlights taped low, hearts pounding loud enough to hear. The air is stale, damp, smelling of earth and sweat. Passages turn sharply, barely wide enough to breathe. Traps wait where a hand naturally reaches. Somewhere ahead, the tunnel breathes back. This is the inversion of invasion. Instead of forcing the enemy out into the open, American soldiers are pulled inside the ground one man at a time. Above ground, the climate keeps fighting. The monsoon returns on schedule, turning weeks of planning into hours of improvisation. Rivers swell and overflow their banks. Low ground disappears entirely. Fire support becomes guesswork when visibility drops to nothing. Aircraft circle, waiting for breaks in cloud cover that may never come. Operations cancel, restart, cancel again. The enemy does not cancel. He moves under the rain, along trails that turn mud into cover. Supply lines that look fragile on American maps endure because they are not roads. They are habits, footpaths, generations of movement worn into the land. You bomb a trail, it reappears 10 meters to the left. You flood an area, movement shifts to higher ground without pause. There is no decisive strike against geography. Search and destroy becomes the language of the war. Find the enemy, fix him, destroy him. But finding is temporary, fixing is fleeting, and destroying is rarely final. Engagements flare and vanish. Body counts rise, but the space between battles never feels safer. In a classic invasion, the invader imposes tempo. In Vietnam, tempo belongs to the environment. Operations start late because aircraft can't fly. They end early because daylight vanishes under cloud. Everything bends around rain, heat, and terrain that refuses to cooperate. And then there is the problem of scale. Vietnam is not a single battlefield. It is jungles, mountains, deltas, highlands, each demanding different tactics, each punishing mistakes in its own way. You adapt in one place and arrive unprepared in the next. Armor that dominates open ground becomes trapped in paddies. Infantry trained for jungle struggles in highland grass that cuts skin and conceals movement just as well. The enemy adapts faster because he doesn't have to reinvent himself. He already belongs. American firepower can devastate a grid square, but devastation does not equal control. The land absorbs damage and continues functioning. Villages rebuild, fields return to use. The war does not stop to acknowledge destruction, it flows around it. By now, the idea of invasion has inverted completely. The U.S. Army is not pushing a boundary forward, it is reacting constantly to a space that refuses to be sealed. Every cleared area becomes a question mark. The moment forces withdraw. Every success demands repetition, and repetition without resolution grinds men down. Morale frays not because soldiers cannot fight, but because they cannot finish. Vietnam remains unconquered not because it is defended by walls or armies in the open, but because it never presents a single surface to conquer. It fights in layers, rain, roots, tunnels, night, and time itself. And time is on the side of the land. By 1968, the war has been going on long enough that the word invasion sounds almost absurd to the men living it. Invasion implies arrival. Vietnam has become permanence. Bases are larger now, more fortified, layers of wire, sensors, cleared fields of fire. They hum day and night with generators and radio traffic. They look solid, but every soldier knows they exist only because aircraft keep them alive. Cut the air, and the ground offers no mercy. Outside the wire, nothing has been truly taken. The Tet Offensive detonates that realization in a single violent moment. Attacks erupt everywhere, cities, bases, places long considered secure. Fighting breaks out inside urban areas that were never supposed to see combat. For the American soldier, the shock is not that the enemy can attack, but where he appears from. After years of fighting, there is still no rear. Tet is not a military defeat in the traditional sense, but it exposes the core truth. Territory in Vietnam is conditional. Control lasts only as long as force is physically present. The moment that force shifts, withdraws, or sleeps, the ground reverts to uncertainty. This is the final failure of invasion logic. You cannot occupy everything. You cannot seal borders that are mountains, jungles, and invisible trails. You cannot dominate a population spread across terrain that refuses surveillance. Even with unmatched air power, sensors, and manpower, the war leaks through cracks that cannot be closed. American units rotate home, new men arrive, the land stays. Experience is lost with each rotation. The jungle does not care how long you have been here. It only knows whether you move like someone who belongs. The enemy never has to relearn the ground. He does not rotate out of his climate. By the early 1970s, withdrawal begins, not because battles cannot be won, but because the war cannot be ended. There is no final objective that transforms effort into conclusion, no decisive invasion point that collapses resistance, only continuation. Vietnam was impossible to invade because invasion assumes a battlefield that can be entered, dominated, and left behind, changed. Vietnam was not that kind of place. It was not a line to cross, but a space that surrounded you. Not an enemy waiting ahead, but one already behind you. Not a war that began when you arrived, but one that continued whether you were there or not. The U.S. Army fought with discipline, courage, and overwhelming power, but power alone cannot conquer climate. Courage cannot flatten jungle. Doctrine cannot erase tunnels. And no army, no matter how advanced, can impose a front on a land that refuses to have one. Vietnam did not defeat invasion by force. It defeated it by endurance.